I really believe I could be fool enough at this moment to undertake any character that ever was written. From Shylock or Richard III, down to the singing hero of a farce in his scarlet coat and cocked hat. I feel as if I could be anyone and everything. As if I could rant and storm, or sigh, or cut capers in any tragedy or comedy in the English language. Let us be doing something. Be it only half a play, an act, a scene. What should prevent us?
Have you heard that Netherfield Park has been let at last?
I had not.
Oh, my dear, it is so, for Mrs. Long has just been here to tell me all about it. Do you not want to know who has taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Oh, why, my dear, Mrs. Long tells me that Netherfield has been let by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, that he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place. Oh, and he was so delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately, and that he is to take possession before Michaelmas, and that some of his servants will be in the house by the end of next week.
What's his name?
Bingley.
Married or single?
Oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine, fine thing for our girls.
Oh, how so? How can it affect them?
Oh, my dear, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I'm thinking of his marrying one of them.
Oh, is that his design in settling here?
A design? Very nonsense how you talk so. Ah, but it is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them. And to that end, you must go and visit him when he comes.
Oh, I see no occasion for that. You and the girls can go, or maybe send them by themselves, which perhaps would still be better, for as you are as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you best of the party.
Oh, my dear, you do flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to anything extraordinary now.
Mm-hmm.
A grown woman who has 5 grown-up daughters ought to give over thinking of her own beauty.
In such cases, a woman is not often much beauty to think of.
But my dear, you must indeed go and visit Mr. Bingley when he comes into the neighbourhood.
No, it's more than I engage for, I assure you.
But consider your daughters. Think what an establishment it would be for one of them. Sir William and Lady Lucas are determined to go merely on that account, for as you know, in general, they visit no newcomers. Indeed, my dear, you must go, for if you do not, it will be impossible for us to visit him.
You are over-scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be glad to see you, and I'll send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying, or whichever he chooses of the girls. Although, I must put in a good word for my dear little Lizzie.
I desire that you shall do no such thing. Lizzie is not the least bit better than any of the others. In fact, I am sure that she is not half so handsome as Jane, or half so good-natured as Lydia, but you give her the preference.
There's not much else to recommend of them. They're all silly and ignorant like all girls. But Lizzie has a quickness to her that she doesn't, that the other sisters don't have.
How can you talk about your children so? Line. You take delight in vexing me. Have you no compassion for my poor nerves?
Oh, you mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my oldest friends, of course. I've heard you mention them for the past 20 years at least.
You do not know what I suffer.
But I hope you'll get over it and live to see many young men of 4,000 a year come into the neighbourhood.
Well, it will be of no use to us if 20 some such come into the neighbourhood, for you will not visit them.
Depend upon it, my dear. When there are 20, I shall visit them all.
Help! Help, my powders! Help!
How surprised you will be, Willoughby, when you receive this. And I think you will feel something more than surprised when you learn that I am in town. An opportunity of coming hither, though with Mrs. Jennings, was a temptation we could not resist. I hope you may receive this in time to come here tonight, but I will not depend on it. At any rate, I shall expect you tomorrow. For the present, adieu. Mary Ann Dashwood. I cannot express my disappointment at having missed you the day before yesterday, nor my astonishment at not having received any answer to a note which I sent you above a week ago. I have been hoping to hear from you, and still more to see you every hour of the day. Pray, call again as soon as possible, and explain the reason for my having expected this in vain. Come earlier another time, because we are generally out by 1. We were last night at Lady Middleton's, where there was a dance. I have been told you were asked to be of the party, but could it be so? You must be very much altered indeed since we parted, if that could be the case and you're not there. But I shall not suppose it possible, and I hope very soon to hear your personal assurance of it being otherwise. Mary Ann Dashwood. What am I to imagine, Willoughby, by your behaviour last night? Again, I demand an explanation of it. I was prepared to meet you with the pleasure which our separation naturally produced, with the familiarity which our intimacy at Barton appeared to me to justify. I was repulsed. I have passed a wretched night in endeavouring to excuse a conduct which can scarcely be called less than insulting. And though I have not yet been able to form any reasonable apology for your behaviour, I am perfectly ready to hear your justification of it. You have perhaps been misinformed, or purposely deceived, in something concerning me, which may have lowered me in your opinion. Tell me what it is. Explain to me of the grounds on which you acted, and I shall be satisfied in being able to satisfy you. It would grieve me indeed to be obliged to think ill of you. But if I am to do it, if I am to learn that you are not what we have hitherto believed you, that your regard for us all was insincere, that your behaviour to me was intended only to deceive, let it be told as soon as possible. My feelings are at present in a state of dreadful indecision. I wish to acquit you, but certainty on either side will be ease to what I now suffer. If your sentiments are no longer what they were, you will return my notes and a lock of my hair which is in your possession. Mary Ann Dashwood.
My dear Madam, I have just had the honour of receiving your letter, for which I beg to return my sincere acknowledgements. I am much concerned to find there is anything in my behaviour last night that did not meet your approbation, and though I am quite at a loss to discover in what point I could have been so unfortunate to have And though I am quite at a loss as to discover at what point I could be so unfortunate as to offend you, I entreat your forgiveness of what I can assure you to have been perfectly unintentional. I shall never reflect on my former acquaintance with your family in Devonshire without the most grateful pleasure, and flatter myself it will not be broken by any mistake or misapprehension of my action. My esteem for... And flatter myself it will not be broken by any mistake or misapprehension of my action. My esteem for your whole family is very sincere. But if I have been so unfortunate as to give rise to a belief of more than I felt or meant to express, I shall reproach myself for not having been more guarded in my professions of that esteem. That I should ever have meant more, you will allow me to be impossible, when you understand that my affections have been long engaged elsewhere, and it will not be many weeks, I believe, before this engagement is fulfilled. It is with great regret that I obey your command of returning the letter with which you... It is with great regret that I obey your command of returning the letter with which I have been honoured from you, and the lock of your hair which you so obligingly bestowed upon me. I am, dear madam, your most obedient, humble servant, John Willoughby.
What sort of looking man is Mr. Martin?
Oh, not handsome. Not at all handsome. I thought him very plain when I first met him, but I do not think him so plain now. One does not, you know, after a time. But did you never see him? He is in Highbury every now and then, and he is sure to ride through town every week on his way to Kingston. He has passed you very often.
That may be. I may have seen him 50 times without even knowing his name. A young farmer, whether on horseback or on foot, is the very last sort of person to raise my curiosity. The yeomanry are precisely the order of people with whom I can have nothing to do. A degree or two lower, and a creditable appearance, and I might have some interest in them. I might hope to be of some use to their families in some way or another. But a farmer can need none of my help, and is therefore, in one sense, as much above my notice as in every other he is below it.
To be sure. Yes, it is not likely you should ever have observed him, but he knows you very well. I mean by sight.
Well, I have no doubt he is a very respectable young man. Indeed, I am sure he is so, and as such I wish him very well. What do you imagine his age to be?
He was 24 on the 8th of last June, and my birthday is the 23rd. It's just a fortnight and a day's difference, which is very odd.
Only 24. That is too young to settle. His mother is perfectly right not to be in a hurry. They seem quite comfortable as they are, and if she were to take any pains to marry him, she would probably repent it. 6 years hence, if he were to find a good sort of young woman in the same rank as his own with a little money, he might be very desirable.
6 years hence? Dear Miss Woodhouse, he would be 30 years old.
Well, and that is as early as most men can marry, who are not born to independence. Mr. Martin, I imagine, has his entire fortune to make, and cannot be at all beforehand with the world. Whatever money he may come into when his father dies, whatever his share of the family property, it is, I dare say, all employed in his stock and so forth. And though, in time, with diligence and good luck, he may become very rich, it must be next to impossible for him to have realised anything yet.
To be sure, so it is. But they live live very comfortably. They have no indoors men, else they do not want for anything. And Mrs. Martin talks of taking a boy another year.
I wish you may not be drawn into a scrape, Harriet, when he does marry. I mean, with being acquainted with his wife. For though his sisters, through a superior education, are not to be altogether objected to, it does not follow that he might marry anybody at all fit for you to notice. The misfortune of your birth ought to make you particularly careful as to your associates. There can be no doubt of your being a gentleman's daughter, but you must support your claim to that station with everything that is in your power, for there are plenty of people who would take pleasure in degrading it.
To be sure, I suppose there are, but while I visited Hartfield, and you are so kind to me, Miss Woodhouse, I am not afraid of what anybody can do.
You understand the force of influence pretty well, Harriet, but I would have you so firmly established in good society as to be independent even of Hartfield and Miss Woodhouse. I wish to see you permanently well connected, and to that end it is advisable for you to have as few odd acquaintances as may be. And therefore I say that if you are in the country when Mr. Martin marries, I wish you may not be drawn in, through your intimacy with his sisters, to be acquainted with the wife, who will probably be some mere farmer's daughter, without education.
Yes. Not that I think Mr. Martin would ever marry anybody but what had had some education and been very well brought up. However, I do not mean to set up my opinion against yours, and I'm sure I shall not wish for the acquaintance of his wife. I shall always have a great regard for the Miss Martins, for they are quite as well educated as me, but if he marries a very vulgar, ignorant woman, certainly I'd better not visit her, if I can help it.
Believe me, my dear Miss Elizabeth, that your modesty, so far from to do you any disservice, rather adds to your other perfections. You would have been less amiable in my eyes had there not been this little unwillingness. But allow me to assure you I have your respected mother's permission for this address. You can hardly doubt the purport of my discourse. However, your natural delicacy may lead you to dissemble. My intentions have been too marked to be mistaken. Almost as soon as I entered the house, I singled you out as the companion for my future life. Now, before I run away with my feelings on the subject, perhaps it would be advisable for me to state my reasons for marrying, and moreover, why I came here to Hertfordshire in design of selecting a wife, as I most certainly did. My reasons for marrying are, first, I believe that it is the right thing for every clergyman in easy circumstances, such as myself, to set the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, I believe it would add very greatly to my happiness. And thirdly, which perhaps I should have mentioned earlier, it is upon the advice and recommendation of the very noble lady, with whom I have the honour of calling patroness. Twice she has condescended to give me her opinion, unasked too, and it was on the very Saturday night before I left Hunsford, between our pools at quadrille, and while Mrs. Jenkinson was arranging Miss de Bourgh's footstool, that she said, "Mr. Collins, you must marry. A clergyman like you must marry. Choose properly, choose a gentlewoman for my sake and for your own. Let her be an active, useful sort of woman, not brought up high, but able to make a small amount go a long way. This is my advice. And when you find such a woman, bring her to Hunsford, and I shall meet her. Now, allow me, my fair cousin, to observe that I do not reckon that the notice and kindness of Lady Catherine de Bourgh is amongst the least of the advantages in my power to offer. You'll find her manners beyond anything I can describe, and your wit and vivacity, I think, should be acceptable to her, especially when tempered with the silence and respect that her rank will inevitably excite. Thus much for my general intention in favour of matrimony. However, it remains to be told why my views were directed here to Longbourn, rather than my own neighbourhood, where I assure you there were many, many amiable young women. But the fact is that as it is to be that I am to inherit your father's estate after his death, which may be for many years to come, I could not satisfy myself but without resolving to select a wife from amongst his daughters, so that the loss to them may be as little as possible when the melancholy event takes place, which, as I said, may be for many years. So this has been my motive, my fair cousin, and I flatter myself that it will not hold me any lower in your esteem. Well, all that remains me for now is to assure you with the most animated of my language of the violence of my affection. To fortune I am perfectly indifferent, and I shall make no demand of that on your father, as I know it will not be complied with, and that £1,000 and the 4%, which will not be yours until after the decease of your mother, which will be all that you're ever entitled with. So on that head I am uniformly silent, and I assure you that no ungenerous reproach shall ever pass my lips when we are married.
You are too hasty, sir. You forget I've made no answer. And let me do it without further loss of time. Accept my thanks for the compliment you are paying me. I am very sensible of the honour of your proposals, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than decline them.
I am not now to learn that it is usual among young ladies to reject the man with whom they secretly mean to accept when he first applies for their favour, and that the refusals may be repeated a second or even a third time. So I am not at all discouraged by what you have just said, and hope to lead you to the altar ere long.
Upon my word, sir, your hope is rather an extraordinary one after my declaration. I do assure you I am not one of those young ladies, if such ladies there are, who are so daring as to risk their happiness on the chance of being asked a second time. I'm perfectly serious in my refusal. You could not make me happy, and I am convinced I am the last woman in the world who would make you so. Nay, were your friend Lady Catherine to know me, I'm persuaded that she would find me in every respect ill-qualified for the situation.
Well, it's certain that Lady Catherine would think so. But I cannot imagine that her ladyship would at all disapprove of you. And you can be assured that when I have the honour of seeing her again, I shall speak in the highest terms of your modesty, economy, and other amiable qualifications.
Indeed, Mr. Collins, all praise of me would be unnecessary. You must give me leave to judge for myself. And pay me the compliment of believing what I say. I wish you very happy and very rich, and by refusing your hand, do all in my power to prevent your being otherwise. In making me the offer, you must have satisfied the delicacy of your feelings with regard to my family, and you can take possession of Longbourn estate whenever it falls without any self-reproach. This matter may be considered, therefore, as finally settled.
Well, when I next speak to you on this subject, I do hope to receive a more favourable answer than what I have received now. Oh, not that I'm accusing you of cruelty at present, for I know it is established custom amongst your sex to reject the man upon his first application, and you may have said as much to encourage my suit, as is consistent with the delicacy of the female character.
Really, Mr. Collins, if what I have hitherto said can appear to you in the form of encouragement, then I know not how to express my refusal in such a way as will convince you of its being one.
You must give me leave to flatter myself, my fair cousin, for your rejections of me are merely words, of course. And the reasons for me believing it are briefly these. I don't think my hand is unworthy of your acceptance, or that the establishment I can offer could be anything other than highly desirable. My situation in life, my connections with family de Bourgh, and the relationship to your own are all circumstances highly in my favour, and I suggest you take it into further consideration. That in spite of your manifold attractions, it is not even certain that another offer of marriage may even be made to you. Oh, your portion is unhappily so small that it in all likelihood will undo the effect of your loveliness and amiable qualifications. Therefore, I conclude that you are not serious about your rejection of me, and I choose to attribute it to your desire of increasing my love by suspense, as is the usual practice amongst elegant females.
I do assure you, sir, that I have no pretensions whatever to that kind of elegance which consists in tormenting a respectable man. I would rather be paid the compliment of being believed sincere. I thank you again and again for the honour you have paid me in your proposals, but to accept them is absolutely impossible. My feelings in every respect forbid it. Can I speak plainer? Do not consider me now as an elegant female intending to plague you, but as a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart.
You are uniformly charming. And when I have the express gallantry of both your excellent parents, then I believe my proposals shall not fail at being acceptable.
Only imagine how happening to me, Mr. Martin. How very odd. It was quite a chance, he said, that he had not gone round by Randall's. He did not think we ever walked this road. He thought we walked towards Randall's most days. He has not been able to get The Romance of the Forest yet. He was so busy the last time he was in Kingston that he quite forgot, but he goes again tomorrow. How very odd we should happen to meet. Well, Miss Woodhouse, was he like what you expected? What did you think of him? Did you think him so very plain? Yes, he is very plain, undoubtedly remarkably plain. But that is nothing compared to his entire want of gentility. I had no right to expect much, and I did not expect much. But I had not imagined him to be so very clownish, so totally wanting in air. I had imagined, I must confess, that he would be a degree or two nearer gentility. To be sure, he is not so genteel as real gentlemen. Well, I think since you have been acquainted with us, Harriet, You have repeatedly been in the company of some such very real gentleman that you must be struck with the difference in Mr. Martin. At Hartfield, you have had some very good specimens of well-educated, well-bred men. I should be surprised if, after seeing them, you should be in company with Mr. Martin again without perceiving him to be a very inferior creature, and rather wondering at yourself as to how you found him so agreeable at all before. Did you not see that? Were you not struck? I mean, look, surely you must have been struck by his awkward look and his abrupt manner, and an uncouthness of voice which I heard to be wholly unmodulated as I stood here.
To be sure, he is not like Mr. Knightley. He has not such a fine air and way of walking as Mr. Knightley. I see the difference plain enough, but Mr. Knightley is so very fine a man.
My Knightley's air is so remarkably good that it is not fair to compare Mr. Martin with him. You might not find 1 in 100 with gentlemen so plainly written as in Mr. Knightley. But he is not the only gentleman you have been lately used to. What do you say to Mr. Weston or Mr. Elton? Compare Mr. Martin with either of them, with their manner of carrying themselves, of walking, of speaking, of being silent. You must see the difference.
Yes, there is a great difference. But Mr. Weston is almost an old man. Mr. Weston must be between 40 and 50.
That makes his good manner all the more valuable. The older one grows, Harriet, the more important it is that one's manner should not be bad. The more glaring and disgusting any loudness or coarseness or awkwardness becomes. What is passable in youth is detestable in later life. No, Mr. Martin is now awkward and abrupt. Imagine what he will be like at Mr. Weston's time of life.
There is no saying, indeed.
But there may be pretty good guessing. He will be a completely vulgar, gross farmer, indifferent and inattentive to appearances, and thinking of nothing but profit and loss.
Will he indeed? That will be very bad.
How much this business engrosses him now is very plain by the circumstance of his forgetting to inquire about the book that you recommended. He was a great deal too full of the market to think of anything else, which is as it should be for a thriving man. And I'm sure that he will be a thriving man and become very rich in time. And his being illiterate and coarse need not disturb us.
I wonder he did not remember the book.
In one respect, Mr. Elton's manners are superior even to Mr. Knightley's and Mr. Weston's. They have more gentleness. They may be held up as a pattern. There is an openness, a quickness, and almost bluntness in Mr. Weston, which everybody likes in him, because there is such good humour in it, but it should not be copied. Neither should Mr. Knightley's decided, downright, commanding sort of manner, which suits him very well. His look, his figure, his situation in life seems to allow it. But if a young man were to set about copying him, it would not be sufferable. On the contrary, I think it may be very safely recommended to a young man to take Mr. Elton as a model. Mr. Elton is very good-humoured, and obliging and cheerful, gentle. In fact, he seems to have grown particularly gentle of late. And I am not sure if he has any designs on ingratiating himself with either of us, with additional softness. But it seems to me that his manners have grown more soft. I think if he means anything, it is to please you. Did I not tell you what he said about you the other day?
I long to see her. I hope she might make some amends for the many very plain faces I'm continually passing in the streets. The worst of Bath is its number of plain women. I do not mean to say that there are no handsome women, but the number of the plain is out of all proportion. I have frequently observed as I walk that one handsome face will be followed by 30 or 35 frights. And once, while standing in a shop on Bond Street, I counted 87 women go by, one after another, without there being a tolerable face among them. Well, it was a frosty morning to be sure, sharp frost, which hardly one woman in 1,000 could stand the test of, but still there certainly is a dreadful multitude of ugly women in Bath.
Father, there is hardly any personal defect which an agreeable manner might not gradually reconcile one to.
I think very differently. Well, an agreeable manner may set off handsome features, but it can never alter plain ones.
For example, the Navy has its utility, though I should be sorry to see any friend of mine belonging to it. Yes, it is in 2 points offensive to me. I have 2 strong grounds of objection to it. First, as a means of bringing persons of obscure birth into undue distinction and raising them into honors their fathers and grandfathers would never have dreamt of. And secondly, how it cuts up a man's youth and vigor most horribly. A sailor grows old sooner than any other man. I've seen it my entire life. Yes, a man is in greater danger in the Navy of being insulted by the rise of one whose father his father might have disdained to talk to, and of becoming prematurely an object of disgust himself. One day last spring in town, I was in company with 2 gentlemen. Striking instances of what I am talking of. Lord St. Ives, whose father we all know to have been a country curate, without bread to eat, I was to give place to Lord St. Ives, and a certain Admiral Baldwin, the most deplorable looking personage you could imagine. His face the color of mahogany, rough and rugged to the last degree, all lines and wrinkles, 9 gray hairs on the side and nothing but a dab of powder at top. In heaven's name, who is that old fellow? Said I to a friend who was standing near, Sir Basil Morley. Old fellow, cried Sir Basil. It is Admiral Baldwin. What do you take his age to be? 60, said I. Perhaps 62. Ha! 40, replied Sir Basil. 40 and no more. Picture to yourselves my amazement. I shall not easily forget Admiral Baldwin. I never saw so wretched an example of what seafaring life can do. But to a degree I know it is the same with them all. They are all knocked about and exposed to every climate and every weather until they're not fit to be seen. Pity they are not knocked on the head at once before they reach Admiral Baldwin's age.
It is over. The worst is over. I have seen him. We have met. We have been once more in the same room. A bow, a curtsy. I heard his voice. He spoke to Mary. Said all that was right. Said something to the Miss Musgraves. Enough to mark an easy footing. The room seemed full of persons and voices. But a few minutes ended it. He bowed and was gone. 8 years. Almost 8 years have passed since all was given up. How absurd to be resuming the agitation which such an interval has banished into distance and indistinctness. What might not 8 years do?
Captain Wentworth is not very gallant by you, Anne. Although he was very attentive to me. Henrietta asked him what he thought of you when they went away, and he said you were so altered he should not have known you again.
I have used him ill, deserted and disappointed him, and worse, shown a feebleness of character in doing so, which his own decided, confident temper could not endure. I gave him up to oblige others. It was the effect of over-persuasion. It was weakness and timidity. My power with him is gone forever.
You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope. Tell me not that I am too late, that such precious feelings have gone forever. I offer myself to you again, with a heart even more your own than when you almost broke it, 8 years and a half ago. Dare not say that man forgets sooner than woman, that his love has an earlier death. I have loved none but you. Unkind I may have been, weak and resentful I have been, but never inconstant. You alone have brought me to Bath. For you alone I think and plan. Have you not seen this? Could you have failed to have understood my wishes? I had not waited even these 10 days, could you have read my thoughts as... I think you must have penetrated mine. I can hardly write. I am every instant hearing something which overpowers me. You sink your voice, but I can distinguish the tones of that voice where they would be lost on others. Too good. Too excellent creature, you do us justice indeed. You do believe that there is true attachment and constancy among men. Believe it to be most fervent. Most undeviating.
I do not know what to do. A proposal of marriage. And a very good letter. Or at least I think so. He writes as if he loves me very much. But I do not know, and so I came as fast as I could to ask you what I should do. Upon my word, the young man is determined not to lose anything for want of asking. He will connect himself well if he can, and it is a good letter. Very good. In fact, so good, Harriet, that all things considered, I think one of his sisters must have helped him. I cannot imagine the young man I saw you talking with the other day could express himself so well if left to his own powers. And yet, it is not in the style of a woman. It is too strong and concise. not diffuse enough for a woman. Or no doubt he is a sensible man, and he may have a natural talent for, when he takes up a pen, he thinks strongly and clearly, and the proper words may come to him. There are such men. I understand his mind. Vigorous, decided, sentiments to a certain point, not coarse. Yes, it is a well-written letter, a better written letter, Harriet, than I had expected.
Well, and what shall I do?
What shall you do? In what respect? You mean in regard to the letter?
Yes.
Well, you must answer it. There can be no doubt, and speedily.
Yes, but what shall I say? Dear Miss Woodhouse, do advise me.
No. The letter should be all your own. I'm sure you will express yourself properly, I am sure. There is no danger of your not being intelligible for the first thing. Your meaning must be unequivocal. No demurs or doubts, and such expressions of both gratitude and concern for the pain that you are inflicting, as his society requires, will present themselves unbidden to your mind, I am persuaded. You need not be prompted to writing with the appearance of sorrow for his disappointment.
You think I ought to refuse him, then?
Ought to refuse him? What do you mean? Can there be any doubt? I had thought... Well, I must have been mistaken. I certainly have been under a misunderstanding if you have any doubt as to the purport of your answer. I had imagined that you were only consulting me as to the wording of it. You mean to return a favourable answer, I collect?
No. That is, I do not mean... What shall I do? Dear Miss Woodhouse, tell me what I ought to do.
I shall not give you any advice. I shall have nothing to do with it. This is a point which you must settle with your own feelings.
I had no notion that he liked me so very much.
I lay it down. As a general rule, Harriet, if a woman doubts if she should accept a man or not, she ought to refuse him. To hesitate with a yes means that you should say no directly. It is not a state to be entered into with doubtful feelings, with half a heart. I felt it was my duty as your friend and older than yourself to say thus much, but please do not imagine that I wish to influence you.
No, I'm sure you are a great deal too kind too. But if you would just tell me what I had best do advise me.
Not for the world would I influence you either way. You must be the judge of your own happiness. If you think Mr. Martin is the best person above all others, if you find he is the most agreeable sort of person that you wish to be in company with, why do you hesitate? You blush, Harriet? Does anyone else come to mind under such a definition? Oh, Harriet, Harriet, do not be deceived in any way and taken over by gratitude and compassion. At this moment, who are you thinking of?
Miss Woodhouse, as you will not give me your opinion, I must do as well as I can by myself. And I have now quite determined, and really almost made up my mind, to refuse Mr. Martin. Do you think I'm right?
Oh, perfectly right, my dear Harriet. Oh, you were doing just what you ought to. While you were in any suspense at all, I could not express my feelings, but now that you have completely decided, I have no hesitation in approving. Oh, and Harriet, this gives me joy. I would hate to have lost your acquaintance, as it must have been should you marry Mr. Martin. While you were in any degree wavering, I did not say anything, but it would have been the loss of a dear friend for me. I could not have visited Mrs. Robert Martin of Abbey Mill Farm. But now we are happily secure.
You could not have visited me. No, to be sure you could not. But I never thought of that before. What an escape. Dear Miss Woodhouse, I would not give up the honour and pleasure of being intimate with you for anything in the world.
Oh, my dear sweet thing, that is what it should have been. Oh, I could not have visited you, and I would have had to give you up. You would have thrown yourself out of all good society. I must have given you up.
How should I have borne it? It would have killed me never to come to Hartfield anymore.
Oh, and there would have been such a pang for me, too. To think of you, banished to Mill Farm, to be confined to the society of the vulgar and illiterate all your life. Oh, I wonder that he had the assurance to ask it. He must have a very good opinion of himself.
And yet, I do not think he is conceited either. In general, at least, he is very good-natured, and I shall always have a great opinion of him, and feel very much obliged. However, that is quite a different thing from... And, you know, though he may like me, it does not follow that I should. And certainly I must confess that since visiting with you, I have met some people, and if one comes to compare them person and manners, there really is no comparison at all. One is so very handsome and agreeable. However, I do really think Mr. Martin a very amiable young man. I shall always have a great opinion of him. And as to his being so much attached to me, and his writing such a letter, however, as to leaving you, it is what I would not do upon any consideration.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, my dear little friend. We shall not be parted. A woman does not need to marry just because someone asks her, or because he is attached to her.
No, this is but a short letter, too.
Very true. Oh, and it would be small consolation for the clownish manner with which he would be offending you every day, to think that he could write a good letter.
Yes, very. Nobody cares for a letter. The thing is to be always happy with pleasant companions. I'm quite determined to refuse him. But how shall I do? What shall I say?
This way.
Are you prepared to encounter all the horrors that a building such as where one reads about may produce? Have you a stout heart? Nerves fit for sliding panels and tapestry? We shall not have to explore our way into a hall dimly lighted by the expiring embers of a wood fire. Nor will we be obliged to spread our bed on the floor of a room without any windows, doors, or furniture. But you must be aware that when a young lady is, by whatever means, introduced into a dwelling of this kind, she is always lodged apart from the rest of the family. While they snugly repair off to their own ends of the house, she is formally conducted by Dorothy, the ancient housekeeper, up a different staircase, through many gloomy passages, and into an apartment not used since some cousin of kin died in it about 20 years before. Could you stand such a ceremony as this? Will not your mind misgive you when you find yourself in this gloomy apartment, too lofty and excessive for you, with only the feeble rays of a single lamp to take in its size? Its wall is hung with tapestries exhibiting figures large as life, and the bed of dark green stuff, of purple velvet, exhibiting even a funeral appearance. Will not your heart sink within you? To what extent would you examine the furniture of your apartment? And what will you discern? No tables, toilets, wardrobes, or doors? But on one side, perhaps, the remains of a broken lute. On the other, a ponderous chest, which no effort will open. And there, above the fireplace, the portrait of a handsome warrior whose features will so incomprehensibly strike you that you'll not be able to withdraw your eyes from it. Dorothy, meanwhile, no less struck by your appearance, gazes on you with great agitation. She drops a few unintelligible hints. To raise your spirits, moreover, she gives you reason to suppose that the part of the abbey you inhabit is undoubtedly haunted, and informs you that you'll not have a single domestic within call. With this parting cordial, she curtsies off. You will listen to the sound of her receding footsteps, as long as the last echo can reach you, and when, with fainting spirits, you attempt to fasten your door, you will discover, with increased alarm, that it has no lock. Nothing further to alarm perhaps may occur the first night. After surmounting your unconquerable horror of the bed, you'll retire to rest and get a few hours and quiet slumber. But on the second, or at the very farthest the third night after your arrival, there will be a violent storm. Peals of thunder, so loud as to seem to shake the very edifice to its foundation, will roll round the neighbouring mountains. And with the frightful gusts of wind which accompany it, you'll probably think you discern, for your lamp is not extinguished, one part of the tapestry more violently agitated than all the rest. Unable to repress your curiosity in so favourable a moment for indulging it, you will instantly arise and throw your dressing gown around you, proceed to examine the mystery. Nine. What is it? No one?
Why are you doing that? We know you laugh.
Yeah, but I blanked. Oh, okay, it's fine. Cool.
He's got it, he's got it.
After a few short moments, you will discover a division in the tapestry so artfully constructed as to defy the most minute of inspections. When you open it, a door will immediately appear, which, being only secured by massive bars and padlock, you will, after a few short moments, succeed in opening. And with your lamp in hand, you will descend into a small, vaulted room. No? You should be too much frightened to do any such a thing. What? Not when Dorothy has led you to believe that there is a small subterraneous communication between your apartment and the chapel of St. Anthony, scarcely 2 miles off? No. You could not shrink from so simple an adventure. No. You will descend to this small vaulted room and through it into several others, but without perceiving anything very remarkable in either. In the first, there may be a dagger. In the second, a few drops of blood. In the third, some vile instrument of torture, but with there being none of this out of the all too common way, and your lamp nearly exhausted, you'll return towards your own apartment. When we passing through the small vaulted room, however, your eyes will be immediately attracted to a large old-fashioned cabinet of ebony and gold, which, though narrowly examining this before, you had passed it unnoticed. Impelled by an irresistible presentiment, you will eagerly advance to it, unlock its folding doors, and search through every drawer. But for some time, without finding anything considerable, perhaps nothing but a hoard of diamonds. At last, however, by touching a secret spring, an inner compartment will open. A roll of paper appears. You seize it. It contains many sheets of manuscript. You hasten with this precious treasure towards your own chambers, but scarcely have you been able to decipher, O thou, whomsoever thou mayest be, into whose hands these memoirs of the wretched Matilda may fall, when your lamp suddenly expires in the socket, leaving you in total darkness.